human brains. I have never made a film outside of America before, but I was drawn to this story of atrocities committed against children. A few weeks before, I had read on the internet that the city of Vienna was burying the brains of over 700 children. The children had been killed 6 decades ago because they were mentally or physically handicapped, but their brains had been preserved until now. I was also disturbed to learn that one of the alleged killers of these children, Dr. Heinrich Gross, was still living in Vienna and receiving a pension from the Austrian government. I came to this funeral from New York to learn why it has taken so long to bury these brains. I also wanted to understand why Dr. Gross was never punished for these alleged murders. As a young man, I studied German in school and was obsessed with the brutality of the Holocaust. So this trip seemed like a unique opportunity to confront someone directly involved in this history.
Wer solche Wesen gesehen hat, der wird wohl nicht mehr behaupten können, dass die Verhinderung zur Entstehung solcher Wesen nicht human wäre. Wenn wir verhindern, dass solche Zerrbilder menschlichen Geistes und menschlicher Gestalt sich in Zukunft verdoppeln und verdreifachen, dann haben wir damit eine Großtat getan, die uns einst Kinder und Kindeskinder danken werden.
The killings in Vienna grew out of a worldwide pseudo-scientific movement called eugenics, which sought to create a more perfect race of humans through selective breeding. A number of countries adopted forced sterilization programs for their physically and mentally handicapped citizens. The Nazis were not satisfied with mere sterilization. They began to experiment upon and kill people they deemed unworthy of life. Some historians consider this so-called euthanasia program to be the opening act of the Holocaust, as it acclimated the people of Nazi Germany to the systematic murder of their fellow citizens, paving the way for Hitler's final solution. A few days before the funeral, we joined a group of international journalists. We were given an official tour of the psychiatric hospital that was once the home of Vienna's killing program. My crew and I were the only Americans.
Spiegelgrund was a very innovative mental hospital, but during the time of the Second World War, things changed. It became Spiegelgrund Children Euthanasia Ward. And, well, for a few years it didn't have the best reputation, I have to say. Now it's a normal mental hospital again. The pavilion in front left, it's ward number 15, so those who want to get out, you're very welcome to do so.
Our first stop was one of the pavilions where the children had been experimented upon and murdered. There were over 20 killing wards like this one throughout the Third Reich, in which an estimated 5,000 handicapped children perished. Joining us on the hospital tour was Dr. Michael Hubenstorf,
Well, it's up to you. Just ask.
a medical historian from the University of Vienna. Dr. Hubenstorf would turn out to be very helpful throughout my journey.
It's down here. You see the church. You see the 3 doors here.
And over there are the 2 pavilions where the killing and diagnosing took place. That's the place.
And are we going to go see that?
No, we are going to the church. I don't know why, but...
So now we are going to restore the church until summer 2005.
Sometimes I take the perspective of a journalist and say, well, I want to see the place. I want to see the spot where that happened, or where is what was the research done? Yeah, or where did the pathologists work? Yeah, things like that. We're seeing the church.
Looks like half a lemon, and therefore they call it the lemon. So we're going down to the bachelorgy.
It's the behavior of Mr. Keibling throughout all the years. He behaves like that.
Why do you think that is?
What do you call that? Sidetracking. Yeah? So I'm not a representative of this institution. I told you so.
This was the chapel here in former times, before the funeral starts, before they brought the dead people to the cemetery. It was the celebration here. But now it's used for the pathology and also for the farewell, say, for all confessions here.
It seemed like they wanted to show us everything except the places that were most relevant to the story. What we really wanted to see was the room where the brains were kept. After we pestered Dr. Keiblinger and the other hospital officials, a phone call was made, and we were finally granted a brief visit to the brain room. I now understood why the hospital wanted to keep us out of the brain room. Knowing that these handicapped children were murdered is bad enough, but seeing firsthand how Dr. Gross and his colleagues removed their brains for research purposes was truly disturbing.
Look at that.
What?
Gemüseschiss und groß und klein.
These are glasses for you use for vegetable, conservation. So you have big ones, like when you want to make sour pickles. So you have this.
That's what is written here.
Yeah. You see here, born 36, dead in 42. She was 6 years old. Now the clinic diagnosis, epileptic. Here, she was born dead, 3 months old. They simply killed him. She's old, 4 years old. Mongoloid idiocy. But it doesn't give the cause of death. You do not die a natural death of mongoloid idiocy.
In one glass there was the head of a child of 1.5 years or something. Complete. It was really like out of a bad dream.
They killed him to experiment with him. And they kept him until now. The perpetrator was a leading psychiatrist, the most famous forensic psychiatrist in Austria. He's here in Vienna. You should make every effort to get at least a few minutes with Heinrich Gross.
I had heard that Dr. Gross was living in seclusion. Although he hadn't given an interview in years, I still wanted to speak with him. I had so many questions. How could he have done this? How did he keep his past a secret for so long? Were the allegations even true?
Heinrich Gross started his medical career just at the beginning of the Nazi period in Austria. So he finished his medical studies in 1939. Before that, as a student, even as in high school, he had been a member of various Nazi organizations back in his school days already. Then he went through a short process of working at several hospitals, a psychiatric hospital outside Vienna, a general hospital here in Vienna, and then came to the institution called Spiegelgrund. And he became one of the leading doctors in this killing program.
Dr. Gross was a young doctor, as many young medicines took the opportunity the Nazis gave them. to go beyond everything that was allowed. So here he was working, diagnosing these children, diagnosing them being idiots, being not able to live without help or things like that. And then from Berlin there came the allowance to kill these children. The children died on a mixture of starvation, being cold, and overdoses of medication. We know that they had taken the brain out of their heads. That was in hundreds of cases where we have his signature on their death certificates.
Also der Pavillon 17 ist, so wie ich immer sage, der Vorhof zur Hölle gewesen. Sind die Kinder hergebracht worden, dort sind die ersten Untersuchungen gemacht worden. Dort sind zum Beispiel Untersuchungen gemacht worden, Schädelröntgen, dass den Kindern Gehirnflüssigkeit entnommen worden ist, Luft in den Kopf gepumpt worden ist mit einer Injektionsspritze. Bei diesem Schädelröntgen sind einige Kinder gestorben. Zum einen, weil die Kinder sich bewegt haben und die Nadel von der Spritze abgebrochen ist, oder weil die Ärzte zu viel Luft in das Gehirn reingepumpt haben und dann einfach die Kinder also an dem Schock praktisch gestorben sind. Für sie waren diese Kinder nur Material. Für sie waren diese Kinder wirklich nur wissenschaftliche Profilierungsmöglichkeiten. Sie haben auf Kosten dieser Kinder, auf Kosten des Lebens dieser Kinder sozusagen eine große wissenschaftliche Karriere gestartet.
After the war, the Cold War already had started between the Soviet Union and the United States, and the position to bring Nazis and people like him to court, you know, it went down. It wasn't so important anymore.
He's taken to court in 1950, and the case is dropped, and he can return to his old profession.
Not only that, but he started working with the brains of these children that had been murdered through the Nazi times.
Being a Nazi wasn't anything special in Austria. There were so many of them that after 45 they spread in all kinds of niches of society.
It was not so astonishing to me that Dr. Gross had evaded justice after the war, but I was shocked to learn that he continued to experiment on his victims' brains for decades, possibly well into the 1990s, at the very same hospital where the children were killed. My journalist colleagues and I were invited to a discussion of the hospital's history. It almost seemed like the institution was trying to put a positive spin on these gruesome events.
Excuse me, how was this possible from the human medical point of view to continue still for a number of years with experiments on the heads and brains of children who were killed, murdered during the Nazi period?
Well, I should say this is a common practice, or has been a common practice, in German-speaking countries. Of course, they don't kill patients today, but the practice is still going on. They wait until they die from natural causes and then study the brain specimens. What those people did was
okay, let's push the process, let's kill the patients, and then use the brain